Everyone good? No? A bit hot? It's not even that hot. It gets hotter.
Could be worse.
So muggy.
Yeah.
It is muggy.
There's a breeze coming.
Everyone good? Well, about a year ago, where we're standing right now was under floodwater, and now we're approaching a very important milestone in our implementation of the Resilient Homes Fund. The first of the homes that have been voluntarily bought back by the state and Australian governments will be demolished. We want to make sure nobody again has to go through what these homeowners went through, not just last year, but in previous floods. This is a world-leading program to take at least 500 homes out of the housing stock of the southeast that we know will flood again and again. It's wonderful to think of those homeowners who've now been able to move on with their lives to a new property that won't flood, so that they don't need to fear the flood season each and every year. 6 properties here at Enid Street, Mill Street and Cox Crescent in Goodna will be the first to be demolished. And as you can see, many of the homes we are buying back adjoin either creek reserves or park reserves and will be easily added by local governments to those reserves, and then adding a value to the local community in more green and open space. More than 40 homeowners in the Ipswich local government area have now accepted our offers. We've valued 160 homes across the city, so many more will be demolished and then rezoned so that they cannot be lived in again. This is a really important partnership between the Queensland and Australian governments, and so I'd like to ask Milton Dick to comment on behalf of the Australian government, and then of course the role of the Ipswich City Council is in taking over this land for us, managing that demolition and managing the land going forward. And we have Mayor Teresa Harding with us also.
Thank you, Deputy Premier. It's a big day for our community. As we know, a year ago this whole area was coined Ground Zero, one of the worst affected flooded areas in our country. This certainty brings hope to a number of residents who have been fearful, worried every time it rains. I want to acknowledge Lance McCallum, the local state member who fought so hard to make sure that our community received its fair share in a true partnership between the Commonwealth Government and the state government as well. I acknowledge the efforts of our local councillors, Nicole Jonik and Paul Tully, who were alongside so many residents cleaning up houses and helping people put back their lives. Our Mayor has been leading the charge to make sure Ipswich residents have not been left behind. To the Deputy Premier, who is a frequent flyer here in Goodna, we thank him and the Palaszczuk government for their ongoing and continual support. This means hope for local residents. This means they can have a better future, and this means our community remains strong, resilient. It's a tough community, but it needs a hand from time to time, and this is exactly what this program will do. The house behind me here will be the first demolished, right next to a sporting complex here, where you'll see open space instead of misery and tragedy.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Mayor Teresa Harding, the Mayor of Ipswich City Council. The voluntary buyback scheme is really gives the people of Ipswich peace of mind. 11 months ago, where I'm standing right now, the water was above my head. It's been a really tough few years for the people in these streets, and we're delighted to see that the first 6 demolitions commence over the next 2 weeks, and they'll be completed over the next 2 weeks. I'd like to thank the Australian Government and also the Queensland Government for funding this program. Council will demolish these homes in a safe manner. We also will work with the community to see how we utilise this space. Here we're right next to Kippen Park, which is a soccer field, so it'd be great to see that expanded. And I'd like to again thank the Australian Government and the State Government for making sure that this program, which gives so much hope and peace of mind to so many people in Ipswich. Thank you.
Lance McCallum, local state member for Bundamba. There's no doubt that this is a very significant milestone on our local road to recovery. It's been a really tough time for a lot of people across our local community who were severely impacted by the floods from Goodna to Bundamba and beyond. The Resilient Homes Fund has been an absolute game changer. Buybacks mean that people are never going to be flooded again on these blocks that have been bought back. It means that flood victims, as well as the broader community here locally, can look forward to the future with more confidence. And if there is anybody out there that thinks that they might be eligible for assistance under the Resilient Homes Fund, for a buyback, for house raising or for resilient retrofitting, I'd encourage them to get online with the Queensland Reconstruction Authority website and register their interest, because registrations for this fund are still open.
Any questions?
Where are we at with numbers-wise? So how many people have applied, how many people have been approved for not just the demolition but then also the raising up?
So on the buyback program, we've conducted 468 valuation inspections. We've presented offers for 258 properties. You'll recall we intend to buy around 500 properties. 167 offers have been accepted and 41 contracts have settled. On the Resilient Homes Fund more generally, there's 5,765 registrations of interest. 630 of those are in the voluntary buybacks. 29% have expressed an interest in raising, that's 1,440. Nearly 2,000 have sought interest in retrofitting, and then 780 households were unsure which option was best for them. We've conducted and completed under the raising and retrofitting program 160 applications worth $10.3 million worth of building work. So that's applications received, but we continue to assess those applications, work with homeowners and their insurers on precisely what the best plan for those properties are. We always thought that the raising and retrofitting program would take longer. It's necessarily more complex than simply buying back and demolishing, but we'll continue to work with those households.
I think 630 homeowners registering interest is, I guess, higher than when we were here in October. At what stage, I guess, should discussions happen with you and the federal government to perhaps expand the program, expand the buyback?
Yeah, so the discussions that we've had with the Australian government aren't so much about expanding the entire pool, but in making sure that we have some flexibility in how it's applied, which program, how much funds is expended on each program. So the mix might change slightly. We might see slightly more buybacks, slightly less raises or retrofits. That's where the data's kind of pointing at the moment, but we think that that flexibility will be there, and that the Australian government will be happy to work with us on those allocations.
Do you think you'll run out of money? Is there a chance people potentially will miss out because the budget's not big enough?
Oh, look, ultimately there is a limit. There's a limited pool, and that limit forces us to work on what the best possible options are. Make sure that we are working with homeowners to determine the best outcome. In some cases that's raising, in some cases retrofitting is much cheaper. The early estimates were based on those early assessments of damage at the last flood, so that gave us a good sense that about 500 was the right number. But as we say, we will talk to the Australian government at the appropriate time about whether we just juggle some funds around to make sure that we get the best possible outcome.
Might just one more on this, or it might be one for the Mayor. It's a bittersweet day. Obviously these residents have wanted this to happen, but at the end of the day, we're going to lose families from streets like this. You know, we're going to see 6 homes gone, and that takes people out of communities. Is that a worry? Perhaps it's for the Mayor, or
I'm happy to comment and then let the Mayor add as she sees fit. The homeowners who I've spoken to have been part of this program have expressed nothing but relief. Of course, sometimes they're heartbroken in leaving communities where their kids have grown up, they've played in these streets, played in these parks, but compared to the despair that they have experienced through flood after flood, their overwhelming emotion has been one of relief. Let's see if the Mayor or anyone else wants to add.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, look, the residents here are very relieved, but there is a real strong sense of community out here, especially around Mill Street, Enid Street and along here as well. I've had a couple of the residents say to me that they're going to try to go house hunting with their neighbours so they can keep that sense of community. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Is there anywhere for them to go? We're in a housing crisis potentially. Do you know if they've been able to get other accommodation?
Yeah, look, Ipswich is the fastest growing city in Queensland, so we've got a lot of housing stock coming on board. So it's up to them, or people might be going outside of Ipswich as well.
Could you just describe, I guess, for us what it looked like you were doing in the height of the flood?
Yeah. Well, during the height of the flood, you actually couldn't get here, because it was flooded. Like I said, it was over my head here. And if you go to see the clubhouse over there, that clubhouse was flooded, to give you an idea of where the flood came to. So, and as the flood washed away, you could see the devastation. And speaking to the residents here, like I said, this gives them a lot of hope, and it gives them peace of mind that they can now move forward with their families, where they can move somewhere where there is no floods.
Mayor, does the council have to fund the cost of turning this into parkland, or where does the funding?
No, we're quite fortunate that the state and the federal government's been quite generous, that all the costs associated with this will be working together on that. So obviously the demolition and so on is being paid for by the state and the federal governments. Yeah.
So ratepayers won't have to fork out, say, to turn this back into green space probably requires some amenities and upkeep.
Yeah.
That essentially doesn't fall back on ratepayers.
Yeah, but if we were doing those amenities, that's a normal process of council, and we would apply for grants as we normally would for any other sporting facility. Thank you.
Deputy Premier, another instance of a car chase involving stolen vehicles allegedly with juveniles behind the wheel. I know Parliament comes back at the end of February. I know you're going to debate that legislation, but can we really wait?
So of the 10 initiatives, not all of them require legislative change, and so we are working to implement those of them that we can without legislation as quickly as we can. So things like the fast-track court sentencing, that will be implemented by providing additional funding for the courts right away. That will take them, then they will need to determine how they use those funds to best achieve that policy outcome. So of the 10 additional initiatives, they will be introduced all as quickly as we can. Those that require legislative change, the Premier has been very clear that that will be a priority for the next parliamentary sitting. And this isn't the first range of initiatives we have on this front, and so we shouldn't forget that all of the other investments, all of the other programs will continue to be implemented. This is really about taking the advice of particularly police about new things, additional things that we can do to provide them with the resources and tools that they need to prevent and fight crime.
The number of children in detention in Queensland has been climbing year on year against the national trend, 4.8 youth per 10,000 in 2021-22. Clearly the perception of youth crime in ravaging the community hasn't fallen. The measures of throwing the kids in prison aren't exactly working. What's the government doing on the social aspect?
Well, so the measures that we introduced were designed to ensure that the hardest, more recidivist offenders did receive detention time and were less likely to receive bail. So the presumption against bail has resulted in less young people receiving bail. That was their intention. The programs that we deliver in detention are where we have the opportunity to intervene, where we have the opportunity to help those young people turn their lives around. Now, one of the things that we've seen is because of the delays in court, many are spending so much time on remand that by the time they are sentenced, they've already served their sentence. And that diminishes the opportunity to deliver those programs in detention. That's one of the reasons we want to see sentences occur faster, so that our staff in those youth detention centres can deliver those programs, because we know when those programs get completed, they are effective. They do help young people change their lives. So that's really why really a key focus of this new range of initiatives we've announced this year. They respond to the effects that have occurred in the system as a result of the changes that we've introduced previously, and we are advised that they will make the system more effective.
Victoria's squashed its Australia Day parade. They've cancelled it quietly. Will Queensland go ahead with their Australia Day parade? Will we celebrate Australia Day as we always have?
There's been no changes to the planned celebrations for Australia Day this week. It's not unusual to have important days of celebration and commemoration that mean different things to different parts of the community, and I think it's entirely possible to recognise our shared past on a day where we also celebrate what our nation stands for.
Do you think personally there is a youth crime crisis?
There is clearly an increase in youth crime, and that is understandably causing concern in the community, and it is the role of elected leaders to act on those concerns, to take the advice of police and other agencies, and to implement policies that we are advised will make a difference. That's precisely what's happening here.
So do you think there is a youth crime crisis then? Is that what you're saying?
There is clearly an escalation in crime, and that is understandably causing concern within the community, and we are responding to that concern.
But you've been responding to that for a number of years now. It keeps coming out with these range of initiatives, and again we keep seeing that the offending is going up. So what's changing? The programs that the Premier announced at the end of last year are in response to the advice of police and other agencies, are what they say they need to further fight and prevent crime, and that's why we are implementing them.
The Productivity Commission data shows that 57% of Queensland juveniles who were sent into detention were back before a magistrate within a year. So is that proof that locking them up and sending them to prison isn't working?
Oh, look, there's a variety of ways to look at that data. There are also data points that show that 90% of young people, individuals, do not reoffend. So the vast bulk do not reoffend. When you look at data like those data points, that is skewed by the number of offenders that reoffend multiple times. And so what we've been consistently advised is that our programs are working very well for 90% of offenders, but there are a small number who just continue to reoffend. We asked police and youth justice and the courts and our other agencies what else they need to be able to intervene in those cases, and that is what informed the package that we announced at the end of last year.
Federal Health Minister Mark Butler says he's keeping an eye on the payroll tax interpretation change impacting GPs. But the state government has so far dismissed concerns from big bodies. Should you be taking this more seriously?
Well, I think it's important that the Australian Government Health Minister does monitor all of the financial impacts on general practice, because funding of general practice is primarily the responsibility of the Australian government, and because the payroll tax interpretation issue that has recently been in the media is a national issue in every state and territory. Nothing here has changed in Queensland. And so I think it is important that our Australian Health Minister is looking at the financial health and viability of general practice and looking at what should be done nationally to improve that viability. And nobody has talked more about the importance of rebuilding primary health care than I have. It's absolutely critical.
On DNA, do you have an update on where we're at with retesting? Because there's been a couple of cases before the courts that have had to be delayed because the DNA involved in the evidence needs to be retested. So we're now seeing delays through the judiciary. Do you know where we're at?
Only in general terms. I'm happy to get a more specific response for you from the Health Minister and Attorney General, but I understand that they are working on how to work through that retesting backlog, including looking at what labs in the private sector and interstate can assist with that work. We will do everything that we can to ensure that all of the testing and retesting that needs to be done to deliver justice does get done.
Queenslanders have the highest rate of youth offending and youth reoffending. Will we no longer, after these initiatives go through? When they go through, will we come down? Will we no longer be the record holder?
There's no silver bullet here, and no one's pretending that there is. What we have is a range of new initiatives that we've been advised will assist police to fight and prevent crime, and as you would expect, we have taken that advice and we will implement them. Thank you. Let's go knock a house down.
Great. We're just going to do
No,
a
I
group shot
forgot.
here.